Okay, one of the first things we always ask is give us your name, where you were born, and when you were born.
Okay. Name's Don Johnson, Donald D. Johnson. I was born in Denver and raised in Denver. I was born in April 1928, and so that makes me about 82. So I'm getting up there.
So you grew up in Denver?
Yes, I did. Went to school in Denver and graduated from South High School, 1946. And then I worked during the summer. My brother and I were supporting our mother. My dad had left, and so we were supporting our mother. So I worked during the summer to make as much money as I could to leave with her. My brother was in the Navy. He had joined the Navy, and so while he was in the Navy, then I stayed at home. And then when he was about to get out of the Navy, and in September of '46, I joined the Marine Corps. So I went to the Marine Corps, to boot camp in '46, and spent 2 years in the Marine Corps. And I was on detached. You had great duty. I was sent to Pearl Harbor after boot camp, and then I was at the Marine Barracks in Pearl Harbor, and I was called out and sent down to Naval Intelligence, the Office of Naval Intelligence in downtown Honolulu, and it was good duty. I lived with the shore patrol, and there were three Marines and 55 sailors, so we figured that was about even odds, you know. So anyway, we did that for 2 years. I loved it because the Navy captain who ran Naval Intelligence, 14th Naval District Intelligence Officer, was a really neat guy. He was very good to me. Why, I don't know, but he was. And as a matter of fact, he said to me, Johnson, you know, you don't need to be guarding this office anymore. Why don't you work on some cases? So I got to work with the Secret Service and the FBI and the Army Intelligence Office. So we got a lot. It was really great. I learned a lot, worked with a lot of really, really great guys. And so I decided when I got out, because I had the GI Bill coming, that when I went home, I would go to school and I'd join the FBI. That was what I had. And they told me, now, Johnson, if you're going to go into the FBI, you get home and you get yourself a degree, either in law or accounting, and then join the FBI, because then you can if you do that, then you'll get to be special agent. And that's where the money was. I said, okay, sounds like a winner to me. So that's what I was going to do. But while I was there, Captain Lyons, who was really a great guy, said to me, Johnson, I want you to go out and see Admiral Nimitz. And I said, where's Admiral Nimitz, Captain? He said, he's on the Iowa, and it's tied up in Pearl Harbor. So I want you to go out tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. You have an appointment. I set it up for you with Admiral Nimitz. I want you to go out and talk to him, because I want you to go to Annapolis. And he can give you an appointment to Annapolis. Oh, I said, Captain, I don't know. He said, well, you go talk to him. And he said, son, when you go out there, make sure you salute the ensign. I said, yes, sir, I will. So I went out, and I met, I was so nervous. You know, here I am, I'm 18 years old, and I'm just fresh out of boot camp, and I'm a private, right? Private, I think. And I'm out there to talk to Admiral Nimitz, right? So I went up the gangway, and I don't know who he was, some Navy officer said to me, what do you want? I said, I'm here to see Admiral Nimitz. Is that right? I said, yeah, that's right. So he gets on the phone, and by God, they said, oh, good. He said, then you come right with me. Yeah, right. So I went up. Oh, that's a huge, huge ship. And they took me up, way up there, to some stateroom up there. And a Marine was guarding the door, and he said, you come in with me. So he takes me into the stateroom and says, sit down here. The Admiral will be with you shortly. So I'm sitting there, and I'm really nervous. And all of a sudden, out comes the Admiral. He's a nice guy. He was the nicest guy you ever wanted to meet. He was just wonderful. And he knew I was nervous. So he ordered coffee for both of us. And I had trouble picking up the coffee cup, you know. I was so nervous. And he said to me, now, son, you just relax. There's nobody here but you and me. And we're just going to talk. Yes, sir. So anyway, we did. And he said to me, do you want to go to Annapolis? I said, sir, I really don't know. I just don't have any idea. I said, I'm not sure I could pass Annapolis. Oh, he said, you pass it. You won't have any trouble passing it. Because he said, they'll give you help. Really? Yeah. But he said, let's talk about, he said, I know Captain Lyons wants you to go to Annapolis. Let's talk about what you want. He was just great. So after a while, he said, I'll tell you what, and we talked for quite a long while. And then he said to me, here, I'm going to give you my telephone number. He said, you take this, put it in your pocket. 2 days from now, I want you to think about this for 2 days. Don't worry about Captain Lyons. I'm going to talk to him on the phone. And he said, you think about this for 2 days. Because what you're doing, you're going to commit your life to the United States Navy. And is that what you really want to do? Now, I said, I know you think the Marine Corps is the greatest thing in the world. But let me ask you a question. How many Marine generals do you think there are? I said, I don't have the slightest idea, sir. Well, there were only 3 or 4 at that time, you know. All right. He said, how many admirals do you think there are in the Navy? I said, I don't know. He said, 5 times that many. So he said, what do you think your chances are of making admiral as opposed to making general? I said, I see your point, sir. So he said, you really think about it, because that's what you ought to do. So you think about this. In 2 days, you call me. If you want an appointment to Annapolis, I'll give it to you. But, he said, make darn sure that's what you want. Don't commit your life if that's not what you really want to do. I said, okay. So I thought about, oh, it's terrible, terrible decision. So I thought about it for a couple of days, and I decided no. I had a college education coming, and I thought, no, I don't think I want to commit my life to the Navy. First of all, I don't swim well, and I don't want to commit my life to the Navy. So I called the admiral back up, came right on the phone, and I said to him, sir, I've thought about this, and I think maybe I'll just go home and go to college. He said, good job, you do it. He said, have a good time. Really a neat guy. So I didn't stay in the Marine Corps, or in the Navy, you know. So I went home. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent 18 months at Naval Intelligence. Went home, got out, started school at DU, the University of Denver. And that went well, got into school. Didn't have any trouble at all getting in, going to school. But I was only in school for a couple of years. I think it was, I went to school from 48 to 50. And then I decided, you know, I wasn't exactly a mental giant, but I decided what I'd do was I'd go into the active Marine Corps Reserve rather than the inactive reserve, which I had been in. Because I was engaged to be married, and I thought, boy, I got to get some money and put some money away, so I'll go out there and be a weekend warrior for, you know, a few months, and I'll earn some money. So I went out in June. I think it was in June of 1950, and they gave me that so-called physical, you know, that took about 5 minutes, you know. And then they said, okay, you come out the next time, and we'll give you, you know, a sea bag full of uniform and stuff. Okay. So I went out the next time, got a sea bag, and got that done. And I didn't know any of these guys. And I didn't even know this was long toms they had out there at the Federal Center. They were 155 guns, millimeter guns, big long toms. And I thought, boy, those are big and ugly, you know, I didn't say anything about those. So I went out the next time, and they said, Johnson, you better go on in there, the captain's talking. Nah, I said, I don't really care. He said, go on in there, the captain's talking. Okay, so I went in, and I listening to the captain, he's carrying on. All of a sudden, I hear him say, and you are on active duty, and we will leave on Sunday. You have 1 week to clear up all of your personal items, and you will report to the train station at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I thought, what the hell is he talking about, you know? So it was all over, so I went up to the captain. I said, what are you talking about, Cap? He said, you're on active duty. I said, I just got here. He said, you are on active duty. You have 1 week. You heard it. That's it. gosh. So I said, I'm engaged to be married. And that didn't impress him at all. I thought, I don't know that I care for this guy particularly, but nevertheless, I'm on active duty. So I come home, I have to quit my job. And then, and my fiance, that was hard news. I said, I have to leave. And they got a little banana war going on there in Korea, and I guess I'm going to have to go. So I said, but we're not going to get married, because I said, I don't know what this is going to be like, and you're pretty young. I don't want you to be a widow. So anyway, I got called Sunday, 2 o'clock, boy, we're all down at the train station, full uniform, ready to go, sea bags, whole 9 yards. Got on the train, and off we went to Camp Pendleton by train. And when we got out there, all these guys from Denver, I got to know them then, And we got out to Camp Pendleton, it was a zoo, an absolute zoo. Well, you can imagine they were bringing in Marines from all over the United States to Camp Pendleton. And, of course, Camp Pendleton's a big base. It's huge, some 20 miles long and probably 10 miles wide. It's huge. But when you bring a whole division in there, you got a lot of guys. So anyway, they were bringing people from all over the country. And I stood duty NCO for every day because some of these guys' wives went with them. They got called back. So I said, I'll take your duty. So I did the duty NCO for 4 or 5 days. So then, the next thing is, you're getting aboard this ship or you're going to Japan. So we went. We left Denver the 1st of August of 1950. We left the States the 15th of August of 1950. And we all ended up making the Incheon invasion the 15th of September. So it's just boom, 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 every month. But we got to Japan. Well, first of all, at Camp Pendleton, they were putting you into different outfits. They say, you're in the 5th Marines, you're in the 3rd Marines, you're, whatever. They just started moving us, 5th and 7th Marines. And so he said, I went through and there was a gunnery sergeant there, master gunnery sergeant in the line I went through. By the way, there must have been 200 men in line in front of each of these 4 or 5 guys that were sticking you in different outfits. Oh, it was a zoo. So I get up there and this gunnery sergeant says, and where were you? I said, I'm a gunner in field artillery. He said, are you really? I said, yes, sir. He said, tell me what you know about field artillery. Oh, man. I said, I don't know anything. But I said, Gunny, you give me 15 minutes, I can learn anything I need to know. Is that right? Yes, sir, I can. He said, you're crazier than hell. He said, you can't learn that. I said, yes, I can. All right, put him in field artillery, get him the hell out of here. So I went to 155 howitzers, and I went to Kink Battery, 4th Battalion, 11th Marines. That's what I did. And that's how I got into the field artillery. So I was in that, and then I stood duty NCO for a while. That's all I knew was, I didn't know anything else. I mean, a couple of the guys, they went out to the rifle range. They were going to fire their weapons. And I hadn't fired an M1 rifle since I'd been in boot camp, But I didn't get to go out because I was duty NCO. So anyway, we got aboard ship and went to Japan. Got to Japan, and the exec officer says to me, his name was Parrott, first lieutenant, and he says, Johnson, I want you to draw up, now get this, I want you to draw up the loading of the LST. We're going to go on an LST. I want you to draw up the loading of that LST, keeping in mind that you got to balance this thing, and you have to put on first on, last off, right? So you got to get those things in, and the weight on each of these. This is what the guns weigh. This is what 6 plies weigh, TD-18 tractors, whatever. And I said, whoa. He said, took me upstairs, up above. I was up in a great big room, huge room. I was the only thing in there. One drawing table I sat at. They had a light up there. And he said, get it done. I'll be back. So I sat up there all day, worked on that stupid thing all day, not knowing what in the hell I'm doing. I worked on it all day. He came about 5 o'clock. So he says, it's all done, right? I said, yes, sir, it's done. He said, okay, you go down and join the battery down on the docks right below this building. Yes, sir. So I go down and join the battery. Well, these guys, we had to load this LST. In addition to us, there were guys, longshoremen in Japan, and they were there to help. So we were putting ammunition on this LST. Now these shells weigh 100 pounds apiece. So you pick these shells up, hoist them on your shoulder, and walk in and down and up along there, and then you lay them down, and you just lay them all the way. You fill the whole bottom of that LST with those 155 millimeter shells. So there are a lot of shells. Then once you get that, then you go in and you lay wood 1x6s over the top of all those shells, and you'd crisscross them, 2 layers. Then you lay powder, canisters of powder. You lay that whole thing on the bottom. Then you go back. You lay wood over that. Then you go back and you lay another whole load of shells again. Now we were working all day, all night, and you worked and you got 15 minutes off every hour. You could rest on the dock. Oh, those things were heavy. And we did that, I think, must have been a good 2.5 days, 3 days to get that done. In fact, the longshoremen quit. They said they won't do it anymore. And so in came, I don't know, somebody, and they were all chipping in Japanese out there. And they made them go back to work until we finished getting that loaded. Got it all loaded. Then they had to take all these guns and back them in there and tie them down to the sides of those with cables to the side of the LSTs, get that done. That's how we got it loaded. Then we found out that we were going to go they wouldn't tell us till we were at sea, but we were going to go and make an amphibious landing at a place called Incheon in Korea. So I thought, well, that's interesting, I'd never been in combat, so I didn't know what to expect. Except the one thing that bothered me is I'd never fired my rifle. I didn't know whether it would even work. So I said to the Lieutenant, I don't know if this thing will fire. I was duty NCO. Oh, he said, that's right. He said, I'll get you some ammo, which they had locked up. So he got me some ammo, and he said, okay, now we're in a convoy, right? He said, fire off the side of the ship into the ocean. And he said, fire yourself a magazine and see how it goes. So I did. I fired off the side of the ship. I had a carbine. So I fired it a while, and I said, it works okay. So I cleaned it, got it all set. So we're waiting to go make the landing at Incheon. And then I find out, he says, by the way, Johnson, you're going to be my driver on the Jeep. You're going to drive for me, and then you're going to work with me in headquarters, and we will fire the battery. Okay, whatever, So I don't know what's going on. So we're going to do that. Well, we learned quick. So we're going to make the Incheon invasion. And I thought, boy, that's going to be something. So I'm going around, and I said, hey, do any of you guys know, are there any snakes in Korea? I don't know. We don't know for any snakes. Well, I'm worried about snakes. Now, I'm not too hot about the Koreans either, but I'm really worried about snakes. I hate snakes. I don't even like large worms. I mean that. I really don't like it. So anyway, that's what we did. We made the Incheon invasion, and we came in. It was raining and dark as dark could be. No moon, no nothing, because it was raining like heck. And they came in and they landed. Now, at Incheon, there's about a 22, 25-foot tidal drop. Bad news. Once you go ashore, you're not going to come off of there until the tide comes up again, because you're sitting. When we hit the shore, we didn't get far enough in. So they poured the coal to it, backed off, went back out a ways, and then here they come again, gave it everything it had. And they slid up on that mucky mud, just slick mud, as far up as they could get. And then they drop the gate, drop the ramp, open those doors. And of course, some idiot turns the light on. That really helped a lot. We take some small arms fire in there. I thought that's wonderful. Then they shut the lights off. Some guy standing out in the water saying, water was almost to his chest, saying, don't go. And there's somebody on the ship over there saying, Johnson, go, go. And this guy says, don't go. I thought, oh man, this place is a Mickey Mouse Club. Well, then they stopped, pulled up the ramp again, backed that thing off, way off, and then just really poured the coal to it, slid way up on that mud, dropped the ramp, opened the doors again, and then they had to lay some timbers down. And I'm in a Jeep, and I have a trailer that's loaded, and they said, go. So off I went, and I can't see anything out there. It's pitch black. So I'm going, and that trailer's sliding on that mud, and the trailer's coming around to meet me, and I got it in four-wheel drive, and I'm going up the hill. I figure it's to the top of the hill someplace, so I'm going up the hill. And I start going, I get up about halfway up the hill. I don't hear anybody. I stop, and I turn around and look. Nobody's come off the LST but me. This is not good. So I shut the engine off, grabbed my rifle, and jumped out, hit the deck, and thought, man, this is not good. There's a lot of small arms fire, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Had no idea. And I'm laying there looking, and it's so dark, you can't see a thing. And I don't know where anybody is, and I don't know what they're doing down there on that LST. They're not coming off. Finally, they did. They started coming up the hill. I don't know how long I laid there, but it just scared the daylights out of me. And pretty soon here they come up the hill. That's how we made the landing. I landed on an island, Womido, which is an island right there in the harbor. And then you land on that. Then when you get up the top and come down the other side, there's a causeway that leads to the mainland. And that causeway, and then we could, thank the Air Force. They came in and bombed the hell out of that. And so it's pretty bad when it's so dark you can't see. So somebody had to stand in front of my Jeep. We had to feel our way across this causeway because there are holes in it. And you can't lose those guns or anything else. And so we made it across, going like this across that causeway, we made it to the mainland. Set up someplace, had no idea where we were. I didn't know. We set up the guns, and they knew, I guess, the officers did. We set up the guns and were ready for the next day. That's how we made the Inchon invasion. It was no big deal, but that's how we did it. And then and of course it's finally stopped raining. And the next morning, of course the sun came up, and I don't know where we are, but we're right outside of Inchon, in the fields out there. And we're going to start pointing towards Seoul. Because our job with the Marines, the infantry, is to go in and liberate Seoul. They wanted to get that back, because Seoul was the capital of South Korea. They wanted to get that back to the South Korean people. MacArthur did. And MacArthur was head of the 10th Corps, and so that's what we did.
Obviously, Incheon was a surprise to the North Koreans, and you
Pretty much.
Came in around behind them, and so they weren't. How long was it after Incheon did you start getting resistance, and you talked about how long was it until you started getting into Seoul and having to really engage them?
Well, several days it took us to get to Seoul, and we got resistance almost right out of Incheon. They still had a lot of troops there, and they wanted to occupy Seoul. They wanted us to have to destroy Seoul because it was the South Korean capital. So they wanted us to wreck it. Well, we did. Not because we wanted to, but we had to drive them out of there. So there was a lot of resistance there that they left. You remember, they had a lot of troops that they brought across the 38th when they came down there, and they left some around there, and then they went on down because they didn't meet a lot of resistance between there and Pusan. So, but then we cut them off, and we moved from there. We moved through Seoul, and I remember we bombed Seoul with those with the 155 howitzers. We really leveled Seoul. Seoul wasn't very big. I don't know how big it was actually. I had all I could do to try to drive my way through the rubble in the middle of Seoul, because it's, the telephone poles are burning, and and they're falling down, and wires everywhere, and we're trying to get through and pull those guns through, and I was leading the battery through it, and so we were trying to get through. So it didn't seem to me to be very big, very many, maybe 4 or 5 blocks of buildings, and that's what it seemed like to me at the time, but I didn't know. So we got on through Seoul and got that liberated, and kept moving toward the 38th parallel. That's what we did. And we got up to the 38th and stopped, so that all the counts and no accounts in Japan could decide whether we're going to go any further or not. And there we were. So they decided, well, yeah, we're going to go further, but we're not going to go further this way. We're going to go back to Incheon. We turned around, took all of our guns, everything back to Incheon. Set up pup tents, shelter halves, and we're going to stay there until we can load board ship. Because we're not going to fight our way across. We're going to board ship and go all the way back around Korea and land at a place called Wonsan, which is further north. So that's what we did. The only problem was, we'd steam north all day, because up at Vladivostok, those Russians let all those free-floating mines go out of their subbase, and coming all the way down toward us. So what we would do is we would go steam north all day, then turn around and steam south all night at the same speed, so that you wouldn't have those mines. And when those mines, we did see a couple. When those mines were there, all these Marines are standing out on the side of the ship, right? Shooting at these mines. Now, this will kill you. I thought this is wonderful. They're shooting at them, and they never did hit them. Never did explode the mine. So pretty soon they send a Navy ship in there, but away from us, we left, and I guess they blew them up. And so then finally we came in. They had to send a minesweeper into the harbor and get all those mines out of there before we could go in and land, which is what they did. Then we went in and landed, which was nice because there was no big deal. There was no enemy there. In fact, there was a sign on the beach that said, "Welcome to Wonsan, you miss Bob Hope. He was here yesterday." So, big deal. So anyway, that was our landing at Wonsan. Then from there, we moved on up north, because they had decided, MacArthur and I don't know who was with him, I'm sure Truman, all the rest of them, they decided we would go up all the way, excuse me, to the Yalu River, which is the border between North Korea and China. Now, we don't have any information. We don't have any newspapers. We don't have anything. And I don't know, but I think China warned America that if you're going to go north, you're going to keep moving north, they were going to join the war. We didn't know that. We kept moving up, and it kept getting cooler and cooler and cooler, because we're getting on into October and starting to get into November, and it's getting colder as we get up. Well, my job, as we moved up, all the way up, it was my job to go down it's hard to remember, but I think every couple of days, I would drive all the way back down to Division, and I'd pick up maps. Because what they did was they'd fly over us in those observation planes, and they'd take pictures of all the terrain. Then they'd go back and land, and they would get these pictures made, developed, and they made maps. So and then they'd number those hills and all that other stuff. And then I would go down and pick up those maps and the mail, and I'd take off back up to the battery. And every time I drove down, it got further and further and further. The last time I drove down, I think we were up about Hagaroo, and that must have been about 65 miles. But it took me all day to drive down there. There's a dirt road, and boy, I'm telling you, if you ever went off of there, you'd drop 500 feet before you ever hit. They just cut a sheer thing out of the side of the mountain, the Japanese did, many years before. It wasn't as wide in most places. You couldn't pass 2 6x trucks. It was not that wide. But I would drive, and that road was open to anybody that can control it. So you had what I tried to do. I put the windshield down, locked it down, and what I tried to do was to vary my speed constantly. I'd come around those curves just going like hell, and I'd slide around the curves, and then pretty soon I'd go 30. Then I'd go 50. Then I'd go 25. So that and they were great with mortars, you know. Those people could put one of those mortars in your back pocket. So what you wanted to make sure of is they didn't get a bead on you. And they hit that, they'd get that road zeroed in. So that's what I did. And I used to go down there, 3, 4 times a week. So I wasn't with the battery during the day a lot of the time. I'd go down, get that stuff, and then hurry back up. Because sometimes I wouldn't get back till it was after dark. And of course you couldn't use headlights. So you would, you'd drive in the dark, but, no big deal. You could see the ground, And I'd go, and I never did take a shotgun rider with me. They told me I could. Johnson, you want to take a shotgun? Take one. No. I thought if they're going to get me, why do we get 2? There's no sense in getting 2. So I drove by myself all the time. And Chesty Puller stayed over there. When we landed at Wonson, Chesty Puller stayed there with these boys, and he waiting for all those Hummers to come back up there. Then he just annihilated them. That's what he did. And then he came on up there to Coterie. He made it to Coterie. And he said, when they told him that we were totally surrounded, well, he said, that's great, then we don't have to go looking for him. I thought, man, oh man. I met him on the road one day when I was driving down. I come sailing around a curve. Man, I was going hell-bent for election. Come sailing around a curve, and there he was. His Jeep was parked there, and I slammed on the brakes, and I slid to a stop. God, I dirt and dust all over him, and I thought, oh, that made a lot of points. And he just sat there in the Jeep and looked at me. He was talking to an Army officer, and he said, what are you doing here? And this officer said, well, he said, we're going to take that hill over there. The North Koreans have come back and occupied this hill. Is that right? He said, well, why aren't you taking it? He said, we're waiting for the artillery to come in and soften it up. Oh, for God's sake, he said. Would you like my Marines to take that hill for you? I thought, oh, boy. And here I am, and I'm thinking, and you want to know what? He's going to recruit old Johnson to go up there, too. But guess what? No way, Jose, I'm not going to do that. So I put that Jeep into low gear. I'm sitting there, and I hit that accelerator, and I went by him like I shot out of a Cheerios gun. I went around him and around that next curve, and they said, you can't go down there. You guess what, man? I went down there and around, and I'm out of there. And next thing I knew, I got up to the battery, and I said, I saw Chesty Puller down there. Did you? Yeah, I did. Well, what did he say? I said, he didn't say anything to me. I said, he didn't want to talk to me, I don't think. So I left. Oh, he said, I see. No way I'm going to let him put me in there. Up that. He said, you know what he said? This guy has, I don't know how many men he's got, but a ton of men. So he says to this guy, get Dog Company on the radio. He's going to take a company of Marines to go up and take that hill. This guy wouldn't take it, and he had about 4 or 5 companies sitting there. And I thought, no way, Jose, I'm leaving. So I left. The last time I went was, I think, when we went down, we were up there about Hagaroo. After that, we made it all the way up to You Damn Knee. which is about as far north as anybody got. We were all there, infantry, our 155 millimeter guns, and then we sent the trucks, which is what you always do. You get to it where your new position is. You send the trucks back, and they go back and they dump all their stuff off, then they go all the way back and fill up with ammo and come back up with all the ammo supplies, all the trucks. So we sent them back. And so we're up there trying to set the guns up, and it is cold. I mean, really cold. And I found out up there a couple of nights before it really hit the fan that if you didn't start those Jeeps or trucks every 15 minutes, day and night, they weren't going to start at all. You have to start them. And we're not talking about just those with diesel fuel had to be started too. TD-18 tractors had to be started and run because that stuff would freeze. And we had trouble with the guns because when you'd fire those guns, you know, they go boom, boom like that. Well, they would go boom, and then they'd slowly go back up because the hydraulic fluid was just like molasses. It was as thick as molasses. Well, it was cold. Up there at the reservoir, it was 33 below zero, day and night. And up there, we got all the guns in place, and we only had 20 rounds per gun. So we had 6 guns, and so we had 120 rounds of ammo. And the first night we were up there, we got a fire mission, and we fired, I don't know how many rounds, quite a lot. And then the next day, we fired quite a lot of it. So we were almost out of ammo. I think we had 2 or 3 rounds per gun left. So we brought all the rounds up to one gun and took the others, hooked them up to TD-18 tractors, and towed them up onto the road. Just put them on the road. And then we had one gun. And then, boy, we knew the Chinese were there. We'd captured a few Chinese, and, you know, a couple of them could speak English. And they tell you what outfit they were from. They're Chinese Communist forces, you know. And I don't know what they call the People's Army or whatever it was. We captured them and said, send these back to MacArthur. Send these Hummers down there and let him know that they're Chinese here. Well, that and 50 cents get you a cup of coffee. He could have cared less. All he wanted to do was get to the Yalu River. Now, we went up on the west side of the reservoir. The Army went to the right side. You see, the Army was there. There were elements. There was about 2 battalions of Army guys on the east side of the reservoir. And they were the 7th Army Division, 2 battalions of them. There were about, I guess, 250 British commandos. They were down there about Coterie, and the rest were made up of Marines. There were about 12,500 of us total up at the reservoir. And we were surrounded, we didn't know it at the time, but we were surrounded by 125,000 Chinese. And what they did was they kind of divided us into 4 groups. Totally surrounded this group, totally surrounded that group, all 4 groups. The idea being they would surround us and isolate us and then kill everybody in there. That was what they had. Good plan. Except it didn't quite work, you know. But I can't even tell you how many Chinese there were up there. I thought I had seen every Chinaman in the world. They would come up the hill. We would always go up and take the high ground, and that's where we would be. We'd get up there and stay there, and then you always knew when they were coming. Oh, occasionally, they'd send out a small patrol, probing to see where the defenses were, you know. But most of the time, when they would come for an attack, they'd blow whistles and bugles, and here they'd come, starting up that hill. You couldn't believe how many there were. There were thousands, just like, it's even worse than an anthill. I mean, here they'd come, they would be, there wasn't any space hardly between them. They'd just keep coming, and you think, oh my God. Some of them went clear through us. And you'd shoot as many as you could, and then one guy'd turn around and start taking them from the back. And we'd kill as many as you can in the front, and then we'd have to turn around and get the ones in behind us, because if you don't, they're going to come up and stick you with a bayonet. Some of those guys didn't even have rifles. They were coming up, and when their people get shot, then they'd pick up the rifle of the guy that got killed, and they'd come further. I mean, this is because we killed a lot of them. Well, you think of for a minute, in 14 days, we killed 43,000 men. I mean, that's a lot of men. People have no idea what that is. I mean, they'd be stacked 5 and 6 high for 20, 30, 40 feet out ahead of you. We nearly burned up our machine guns. You're supposed to shoot in short bursts. You never shoot, all the time. You shoot in short bursts. But you have to shoot fast because they're coming at you. And you can't let them get the guns. And so we darn near burned up machine guns. Those guns would be almost red hot. And it's 33 below zero, and they still would be hot. But that's the way it is, And down the line would come the word, fix bayonets. And man, that'll make your blood run cold, if nothing else, So I put by the way, I told you I had a carbine when I made the landing. Well, I soon got rid of that carbine. They're worthless, You hit a man with a carbine, keeps right on running at you. No, I don't want that. So I got an M1 rifle. And I used an M1, but when I put my bayonet on that first night that they hit us, and I never took it off the rest of the time I was on the march. It stayed on there every night. And I carried a lot of ammo with me, because one of the big problems was it wasn't so much that at first that we were going to run out of ammo. I had quite a bit of ammo. I think I used to carry, 8 bandoliers around my neck. And I think in the bandolier, and I can't remember anymore, but I think there were 8 magazines in each bandolier, and I think I had 8 bandoliers. So, I had a whole bunch of ammo. But you know what? I'd darn near use it all up in one night. And one here they'd come, and then they'd, you can't believe it. There's a movie out that I don't think will ever be distributed. I saw it last week at the Chosin Few reunion, and it's called Chosin. I don't know where they got the battle film, where they got it. It's actual combat film. I don't know where they got it. But it shows the Chinese coming up the hill. And it shows them coming over the top. And that's what it was. That's what it was like. And it was at Udamne. That's where I was. It was amazing. And by the way, it snows up there. It snows. And the wind, it doesn't snow straight down like it does here in Colorado. It comes sideways. And the wind would just blow like crazy. And it could snow a foot overnight without any trouble at all. And it snowed all the time up there. Of course, we had beards, great big beards, and it was terrible. Your nose would run, and when your nose would run, it'd run down, and it'd run across. Pretty soon, you couldn't open your mouth, because your nose, and it was cold, so bitter cold, that what you'd do is you'd go to a guy and he wouldn't see you do it, and he'd reach over and hit you in the mouth with your hand. Oh! Then he'd get mad and he'd yell at you, but you would break the stuff and he could open his mouth. That's what we do. And nobody was allowed to sit down. Because if you sat down, you'd freeze. The only time we sat down was when we were up on the hill. On the top of the hills, you'd lay down. But I kept moving my feet and my hands. And every 15 seconds, I'd pull that operating rod handle back on that M1 rifle to make sure it would keep moving. Because, if you didn't do that, it would freeze shut, and you couldn't fire it. That was it. So you had to make sure it worked. You got to use your head when you're up there if you're going to survive. You just got to use your head. And I never got in a sleeping bag. I wanted to be where I could move if I had to move. Because what happened oftentimes, you tried to take care of the guy on the right and the guy on the left of you. And they tried to take care of you. And so you would shoot pretty soon. Each night we go up there on a hill, each night the space between you and the guy next to you'd get wider and wider and wider because we were losing so many men. You see, when I say we lost about 5,000 men there in 2 weeks, and so that's a lot of men. But so you'd find out the spaces are getting bigger and bigger, and your chances of surviving are getting less and less. But we would, then after they would blow the bugles again, down they'd go. They'd stop, they'd all turn around and go back down the hill. And we'd leave, there'd be dead laying everywhere. We would try to take our own dead and our wounded. And we'd take the wounded down, and you know, it wasn't hard to take them down the hill because, you know, it was snow up there. But so when you take the wounded down, you take them by the, just grab a hold of their parka by the hood and just pull them on down the hill. And then when you get them down to the bottom of the hill, you turn them over to whoever was there by the convoy, and they get them to a aid tent. And then we take the dead the same way. We took the wounded first. We took our own dead out with us too. We brought our dead out, and we put the wounded, after they got out of the, if they could get to a unit, sometimes they couldn't, we'd put them aboard trucks. And then we would put the dead on the outside. We put them on the fenders and the bumpers, and sometimes you'd have to, although it sounds a little crude, you do what you have to do. We tie their arms and legs together and slide them down the tubes of the guns because you have no place else to put them. So that's what we did. We tried to bring them all out. Well, we didn't bring them all out. At Coterie, when we finally got to Coterie, we buried 127 dead there at Coterie. And what they did, what you have to do, you have to break their arms and legs so that they will come down, because they die in various, you know, and they froze. The minute they died, they froze to death. I mean, we're talking 33 below constantly. And so we put them all, I didn't put any of them in there. I was standing, I was looking for a place to go to the bathroom at Coterie. They said, somebody said to me, they've set up a tent over here that you can go to make a john out of it. Oh man, I thought that'd be great, you know, if I could get in there. So, because it's so cold, you try to take your pants down, all three pair, you know, try to take your pants down. By the time you got your pants down, you couldn't go to the bathroom. So damn cold you couldn't go. In fact, we had some guys that had died of locked bowels on that trip. You know, it's just cold. It's miserable. It was cold not only for us, cold for the Chinese too. Anyway, we buried them, a bunch of them there, and up there at the reservoir, as I said, there were 12,500 of us, and we lost, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 men were killed. And this was all in a 2-week period. So we lost 3,000 to 4,000 men dead, and we had 6,000 more wounded. And so then the rest of them had pretty severe frostbite. But let me tell you what, when we took our share, we killed over 45,000 Chinese in 2 weeks. That's a lot of men. That's what it took in order to fight our way out and get down to Ham Hung. And that's sort of how it went. Then we fought our way out, little by little by little. Around every single curve was a roadblock. But you had to fight your way through them. And so we did. I walked all the way out because my Jeep was gone. I didn't tell you that, I guess, when I was up there. We first got up to UDamnee. The battery commander, my battery commander, he and I were not the greatest of friends. I need to say that. And he said to me, Johnson, I want to use your Jeep. I'm going down to find the ammo trucks. Being smart, I said, why the hell are you doing that? I said, there's only one road. How the hell can they get lost? That wasn't a smart thing. He said, I'm taking your Jeep. I said, all right, just a minute, let me get... He said, no, I don't want you to go with me. You stay with Parrott and fire the battery. I'll get my own shotgun riders. I said, okay, you do that. So I grabbed my rifle and off he went. So he had my sleeping bag in there and my pack in there, and off he went. Well, he goes down to find the ammo trucks, right? And he gets down there, and they're down there. I think they were down at Coterie. So he says, he's going to come back to the battery. And they said, you can't go up there. It's closed off. The road's closed off. Well, he knew better. He always knew better. So he goes up, and he gets shot. He didn't get shot. They killed the driver of the Jeep. They wounded 2 other guys and took them all prisoner. So he spent 3 years in a prisoner of war camp up there near the Yalu, I guess. I never did see him again after that. But I came down on the road. When I came down, I was walking down. When I finally got to the road, I saw my Jeep. It was upside down on the road. And I looked in there. My pack was gone. Sleeping bag was gone. Everything was gone. Well, it wouldn't make any difference anyway. I didn't get in a sleeping bag the whole time I was up there, ever. It's too dangerous, you know. You can't get out of it. And you got to be able to be out of it. So anyway, that was kind of how it was. You know, I walked all 78 miles out to Hamhung. And when I got out, I got down to Hamhung. I didn't think I'd ever make it. I could not believe I was still alive. Because once we got hit on the road, one night we were walking between Udamne and Hagaroo, and it was colder than hell, and wind was blowing and snowing like crazy. And I don't know what it was, I felt I couldn't straighten up. I was half bent over. And I couldn't straighten up. I tried to straighten up, and it hurt like heck, so I just stayed kind of, didn't make any difference. I was bent over. And we got hit by the Chinese. What they did was they laid down on the ground, and the snow covered them up. It was a great big area to the left of us, a great big area, and they laid down in the snow. And so we're going along, and all of a sudden they blow the bugle, and they all raise up, and here they come. They're very close to us. So, man, the firing starts right now. And we were shooting, and my exec officer got hit, Lieutenant Brown got hit, and I don't even know how many other guys, a bunch of other guys got hit. They're all over the road. I said to him, stay there, we'll get you. So we had to get rid of the Chinese. And we stacked Chinese up a good 4 foot high, maybe 10, 15 foot back. I don't even know how many Chinese were up there. There must have been 200-300 of them right in there. And so then they pulled off and left, and then we put all the wounded aboard the trucks. And then we had to fight our way into Hagaroo, because what happened was the rest of the convoy kept going. And we got hit, and so we couldn't go anywhere. So then this guy says, Johnson, I want you to walk the point. And I thought, I don't know what I said to him, that was bad, but I got to walk the point, and that scared me to death, I'm way out there by myself. I'm out by myself, and then behind me are 2 guys. Behind them are 2 others. Then there's the convoy. So I must have been out about, I don't know, in the city, I think you'd say probably a block and a half, I'm guessing. And I'm walking out there alone, and I know good and well they can hear me. You walk on that snow, and you just crunch on that frozen snow, so I know they can hear me. And I'm walking all night long. I walked. We finally made it took us all night to get, I don't know, like 4 or 5 miles into Hagaroo. But I made it, and just one time I got so scared. I walked around, they have cuts and fills, when you make a road, and I walked around this curve, and there was a guy sitting in a crotch of a tree, small tree. He must not been more than 4 or 5 feet off the ground, sitting in the crotch of this tree, Chinese soldier. He had me dead to right. I hit the ground, I'm rolling over and over, and I'm shooting, rolling over and I'm shooting. I keep rolling and shooting. Hell, he doesn't move. About that time, up come these other 2 guys, and they hit the deck too, and they're shooting. I said, cover me, So I kept going up the road a ways, and then I cut back in back of him, and I'm shooting, and then they stop shooting. And I get up there, and this guy had enough holes in him. I mean, he could have died of pneumonia from the holes in him. He was frozen stiff. And I don't know how long he'd been dead, but he had been dead. We didn't kill him. He'd been dead a long time in that tree. So I took my bayonet and pushed him out of the tree onto the ground, and then went back to the road, and I said, well, try this again, So up the road I went again. Finally got into Hatgaroo, and then from there we went down to Coderine all the way down, all the way home, back to Ham Hung. They hit us the night of the 27th of November, and I got back to the coast on the 10th of December. And people say to me too, what did you eat? Well, hell, you can't eat anything up there. It's frozen. But I tell you what I did try to do. I thought, I'm pretty with it. I got a can of meat and beans, frozen like a popsicle. So what I did was I opened a hood of a 6x truck and laid it on the manifold. And I'm going to heat those meat and beans up, right? Well, I neglected to punch a hole in the can of meat and beans. All of a sudden, that son of a gun exploded, and God, I hit the deck. I'm still jumpy, but I hit the deck, and the guy that had the truck, oh man, the driver of that truck was madder than hell, because there were meat and beans all over that engine. And I said, well, quit complaining, threw the damn thing down. So I thought, well, find another one. That's pretty hot in there. So I found another one, and we were at a stop. They were having a little firefight up there around the curve. So I got a can of I think it was, I don't know, chicken and some other stuff. So I crawled under this truck, and I took a piece of wire, and I wired it to the tailpipe. And I thought, you know what? And I punched a hole in the top. And I thought, man, that's going to heat it up slowly, and I'm going to have something to eat. But anyway, that truck, I was going to tell you, came back down off the hill, and I knew what truck it was. And I walked down, I said, what the hell are you doing? All of a sudden, I saw this truck, and they pushed it over. They got hit, or it ran out of whatever, it stopped running. So they pushed that truck over the side of the hill, and there went my meat and beans all the way down the mountain. So I thought, well, so much for that. But I had in among all of the dog tags, I had charms. You know what charms are? They're little pieces of candy about an inch square, flat, and they're wrapped individually. And I had a pocket full of those charms, and I'd eat 2 or 3 a day. And that's what I ate. That's what I lived on until I got out of there, which was fine. That was okay. You don't need to eat as much as you think, especially when you're scared. You don't need that much to eat. And another thing, when you don't eat all that food, then you don't have to have bathroom facilities, which we didn't have. So some guys ate and they shouldn't have, tried to eat. But, we didn't have any fires. You never started a fire. In fact, you didn't smoke at night. They could line you up with a cigarette in your mouth. They'd take your head right off, So you'd be crazy to do that. Now, we all smoked, but we never smoked at night. I didn't. I'm sure some guys did, but I didn't. And I didn't have a sleeping bag because, the lieutenant took it with him. But I wouldn't have gotten in it anyway, so it didn't make any difference. And a couple of guys I know, they took their boots off, got in a sleeping bag, And then the Chinese hit, and they lost half their feet, from freezing, because they couldn't put their boots back on while they were fighting. And you're walking around in ground that's concrete in essence, it's just, that ground was really hard. So you got to use your head. Well, I had to go off and climb the hill because it's getting late, because I used to go up on the hill every night, and I'd go up on the hill, and we'd go up about 3:30 in the afternoon, so you could, because it takes a while to get up the hill. You climb a hill, you got all this ammo hanging on you, and your rifle, and hand grenades. By the way, I took as many hand grenades as I could hook on me anywhere. And so I'd climb that hill, and you're sliding on that snow. For every step you take up, you slide back too. So I used my bayonet on the end of my rifle to help me climb up the hill. Worked good. So I get up the top of the hill, and you got to find your field of fire, and they'd set you out, the lieutenants, whatever, they'd set you wherever you're going to be. So you'd look out there to make sure, because sometimes there was a rock there, and there's a little scrub tree there, So you want to make sure you know what those are, so you don't waste ammo shooting at them, Because we couldn't waste ammo. We ran out of ammo, and they dropped ammo to us out of those flying box cars. They'd kick ammo out of there on those big plywood sheets. Scare the hell out of me. Here come those plywood sheets down down to the ground, and you didn't know whether they were going to hit you or what. They'd hit the ground and explode, those sheets of plywood, But that's where we get the ammo. Sometimes they missed us, and the Chinese would get the ammo,
Along the way from the time when you're landing at Incheon and then made this other landing at Wonsan, are you getting to deal at any point with the Korean civilians? And was there any difference in the attitude when you were in South Korea or North Korea at that point with the civilians?
We didn't deal with the civilians very much at all. When we landed in South Korea, one of the things I did was I'd go into a village. We'd always check the villagers out pretty carefully. But I'd go into a village, and what we would do, I always had clean clothes. Because I'd take my clothes into the village, and they'd wash my clothes and iron them. The women would. And so I always found a way to get boxes of C rations. When I'd go down to division, I'd get maybe 10 or 15 of those boxes of C rations. And I'd keep them in my Jeep. So when I would go in and have my clothes cleaned, I would give them a box of C rations. I'd give the cigarettes to the papasan that ran the village, because, that made him happy, because they smoke like chimneys if they can get it. And then I'd give all the food to the women. And, they'd take a can of like chicken and rice or something, and they'd put in a big, I don't know what you got, just a big bowl, cullen or whatever you call it. And they would put that, and they'd feed the whole village off of that. So we kept giving them a lot of stuff. And I think I've talked too much. I got to tell you one thing. Parrott and I used to go up and find new battery positions. That's one of the things was his job and mine. I would drive him. We'd drive right up as close as we could to the infantry, then get out and walk on ourselves up there. And he would say, this is where we will put the battery. We wanted to stay very close to the infantry all the time, so that we would do high-angle fire, so that always we were in a position to support them. That was the idea. Well, we were going up one morning. It was cold. It was had to have been in October sometime, late October, I guess. And it was really cold. And we were going up there, and there was a little child sitting on the road. And there was a village over to the right, maybe a block off the road. And you have to be careful, because you don't know but what this isn't a ploy, that they use women and children a lot. It's terrible. But anyway, so I said to him, okay, Parrott, you cover me. I'll go check it out. Okay. So I stopped the Jeep. I got out, worked my way up to this child. And Parrott kept me covered. I got up to this child, And I looked at her, and I said, it's okay. So he drove the Jeep up. And this little girl, it turned out to be a little girl. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was a little girl. She couldn't have been, and I don't know, it's hard to tell the ages of, for me it is, of Asian kids and women, and all of that's hard to tell. But this little girl was sitting on the road. She had these big splotches on her face and her head, big purple splotches all over her and on her hands. And she's sitting at the edge of the road. They do that though. This girl was sick, so they got to get her out of the village so everybody in the village doesn't get what she's got. So they put her out there to die. That's what they do. So she's sitting there, and I said to Parrot, this kid's sick. He said, yeah. And I said, well, why don't we take her with us, and I'll take her down to Division. It's okay. Just put her in. I put her in my sleeping bag and wrapped her all up in that sleeping bag. Tried to give her a cookie. She couldn't even hold it. She was so cold. So anyway, I covered her all up. We had to go up and find the battery position. Parrot says, will you stay with her? I'll go on up. And he went on up, found the back, came back. We got in the Jeep, went back to the battery. So I said, I got to go. He said, yep, you go on down to Division. So I took that little girl with me, and I went all the way back down to Division. It was a long way down. That little child, not a whimper, not a sound out of her. Took her all the way back down to Division. And I got in there, and I carrying her in, and I said, I want to see a doctor. And what do you want? I said, I want to see a doctor. Give me a doctor. All right. Well, I just came off, I got hand grenades. And these people don't have any of that stuff down there, So here comes this doctor, and he said, yeah, what do you need? I said, I got this little girl, and there's something the matter with her. So they take all of this off of her. And I said to him, what's the matter with her? He said, I don't know. Well, you're a doctor. Find out what's the matter with her. So he said, she has an infection. I said, okay, can you fix her? Well, he said, yeah, I'm sure we can. I said, how long? Well, I don't know. He said, probably 10 days. I said, I need to know. He said, 10 days. I said, okay, Doc, I'm coming back to pick her up in 10 days. I'm going to take her back to her mother. So don't be sending her to an orphanage. You understand? Because I'm going to come looking for you if you do. I want that little girl back. All right, he says. So I left her, and I went 10 days. I went back and got her. By that time, we're considerably further north, and it's colder than hell. Well, you see, I put the reason it made it so cold when I drove was I put the windshield down. You don't want to get hit with small arms fire with that glass in there, so you put the glass down. So it makes it cold when you're driving. So I got that, and that little girl was a little girl. She was running around there just lively as she could be. All of that stuff was gone. And I said to him, doctor came. I said, what was the matter? He said, she had an infection. He said, the penicillin cleared her right up. He said, she's been doing, and they made her some clothes, the nurses. So anyway, I said, well, she's got to go. Oh, they didn't want her. I said, she's got to go back to her mother. So I had marked it, we marked it on a map. So I went back, I put her in the Jeep, covered her all up, and off we went. Not a sound out of that kid. Not a sound. And all the time I was on the march, up at the Chosin even, when I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I took this little girl back to the village. And I thought, I'm going to have some heat from this papasan, but not very damn much, And I took her back, and of course, all the women are just standing there. They don't speak. And this papasan, and I don't speak Korean, so I don't know what he's saying. So I said to him, come here. So I was washing for him. So I had a little girl standing there with me. So I opened up her thing, look at her, Yeah. So I handed him a package of cigarettes. Yeah, that's fine, So I said, I don't know who her mother was. So I'm looking over there, and I said to the little girl, go get your mother, So she ran over there to her mother. Oh, and I don't know. Excuse me. The Chinese came down and took over that. I don't know whether she ever lived or not. I have no idea. But we took, on that march out, we took 90,000 refugees with us on that march. We took some prisoners too, by the way. Not too damn many, but we took some prisoners. And we didn't take much heat off of the prisoners. On the way out, there were some 90,000 of these people. We put a few in the trucks, but we couldn't do much because we had our own wounded that we put in the trucks, you know, and you couldn't put them on top. And the men had to walk, and the women and children could go in trucks. But you know what? In all those people that were there, I never heard one child cry. Not one. What do you suppose Americans would do? Be bawling their heads off, you know? Those kids don't cry. And they had nothing to eat. They had no fires. They had nothing. But we took them all the way out. Do you know that they evacuated all 90,000 of them? Were taken out of the harbor there at Ham Hung. And do you know that today, that their offspring and all that there's now 1 million of them that survived that? I just found that out. A guy from Korea told us that at the Chosin reunion. And then I made it to Ham Hung. And when I got there, Corman said to me, "You got to go see the doctor." I said, "No, I got stuff to do." I had a pocket full of dog tags. I don't know why the hell they kept handing me the dog tags, you know? But they did, and I had pockets full of dog tags. So they had a tent down there at Ham Hung or Hung Nam or whatever the heck it was. And that's where you're supposed to take the dog tags. So I went in, and I said, I have some dog tags from some of these guys. So this young lieutenant is sitting there, and he says, "All right, now," he said, "I want you to explain to me how each of these men died." I said, "You must be crazier than hell. How do you suppose they died? You know, you dip." Well, about that time, this colonel come up. He said, he puts his hand up and he said, "Tell me, son, are these men all dead?" I said, "Yes, sir, they're all dead." He said, "That's fine. You don't have to say anything else." So I left. And there were dog tags from my outfit and others. I don't know who's all the outfits, but I don't know how many dog tags I gave them, but I gave them a couple of hands full dog tags. So I left. And I went to get the mail because I wanted to see if Joan, my fiancée, had sent me a letter. So I got the mail bag. Then I thought, what the hell am I going to do with this? There was only 2 guys that I know of from King Battery that walked out of there. So I didn't know, what am I going to do with all the mail, you know? So I went through all the mail. I got through 3 or 4 letters from Joan. So I put the rest of it back in the bag, took it back to the area and said, "Here, I don't know what you're going to do with them, but they're all yours." Gave them back. So I'm walking back. 2 MPs come up to me. They said, "You named Johnson?" I said, "Jesus, how do you know my name? Leave me alone. What do you want?" He said, "You're going to sick bay." I said, "I'm not going to sick bay." He said, "Yes, you are." He said, "You got 2 choices. Either you go or we carry you. That's the way it is. You're going to sick bay." I said, "Who told you?" He said, "Just do it." So he walked to sick bay. Corman was over there. He said, "Johnson, I want you to see the doctor." Oh, he said, "I'm all right." "No, see the doctor." Doctor says, "Pull your pants down." All of them? Yeah. Take all my pants down. So he says, he checks me out and he says, "You have an infection in your groin. It's from the frostbite in your feet." He said, "This infection's run up into your groin." He said, "You got to get rid of it." He said, "So, go sit on that bunk over there and stay there." I said, "Oh, look, Doc," he said, "go over there and sit on the bunk and shut up. I don't want to talk to you. I got all the problems I need." I said, "Yeah, I know. So I went over and sat on the bunk, went out to Japan to the hospital. That's where I ended up. You know, a couple of shots of penicillin, 500,000 units of penicillin, got about every 12 hours, and in 2 or 3 days it was gone. I was fine. Now, my feet didn't heal up then, but I was in good shape. So I was in the hospital there for, very short time. And after I got out of the hospital, I was put in a casual company, and I was expecting to go back to Korea. And we're trying to let our feet heal. Because I pulled a silly thing. When we were in the hospital in Japan, boy, that was a neat place. We went to an Army hospital. Hell, they're a lot better than Marine Corps. I mean, a lot better. So we went in there, and these doctors, they wouldn't let us take our boots off. They said, don't you sit on the floor. So we sat on the floor in a big, long hallway. Don't touch your boots. But I don't care. I'm warm. We're inside of this. I haven't been warm in so many days. I couldn't believe it. I sat there. I was so warm, and I was starting to kind of half fall asleep. And these doctors, he'd come to one person at a time. And they had scissors, and they'd cut through your boots all the way down, and then they would cut them across. Then they'd take the boot off very gently. Then he'd take the scissors and he'd cut through your socks, all to the end, very gently. And the reason they did that is they learned after a while, because they would take those socks off and the guys' toes would stay in the boots, They'd freeze, and of course they'd fall off, they stay right in the boots. So they didn't want that to happen. So anyway, they cut them all off. So we're sitting there with our feet up, sitting there on the floor. And I'm looking across the hall, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It said showers. There's showers. And this doctor said, well, I'm leaving, I'll be back. Just stay there, don't move. Yeah. So we're staying there. So I said, man, let's go in and get a shower. What do you think? Now, you have to understand, I haven't washed or brushed my teeth, I suppose, in 3 weeks. And I thought, a shower? My God, wouldn't that be something? Well, we were just in there trying to let the frostbite heal a little. What happened was we got in that shower. And boy, that doctor came back, and was he mad. Oh, God, he yelled and screamed, turn off those showers right now. Sit down. So we're sitting down in the showers on the floor. And he comes in, and all of a sudden I looked down, and I thought, oh my gosh, the blisters, we had hot water on. Oh, I can't tell you how good that felt. But that hot water didn't help the blisters. I had blisters on my feet, on the sides. They were about this big, just huge blisters. And he was madder than hell. So he had to go by each of us, and he'd take hypodermic needles, and they'd go in the good skin, they'd go up under there, and they'd suck all that stuff out of those blisters. And it took him a long time to do that. All the time, he's given us hell. He was giving us a bad time. And, of course, he got all that out of there. And he said, don't you get in that shower one more time, any of you. Well, hell, we'd already been in, we were clean. And so, and we were even trying to shave. We couldn't get the whiskers off because of all the beard. So we asked some gal if she could find us a pair of scissors. And so we cut all that off, and then I shaved. But we had a lot of ingrown hairs, in there. But we shaved, got a lot of that off of there. Oh, that felt so good. But we didn't get, then they transferred us to the Naval Hospital in I don't know, Kuska, I think, is a naval hospital. Then when we got out of that, they put us in a casual company and said, there's nothing you can do but sit and let those things kind of try to heal up. We go out for muster, though. The Marine Corps, you do that, right? It's colder than hell outside. We got on little slippers. We go out and stand for muster in a pair of pajamas and a bathrobe. And the sergeant major stands clear across the field, and he holds muster. I'm waiting to go back to Korea because I figure I'm due to go back soon. Got called out one morning, and this sergeant major called out 18 names. Mine was one. And I thought, God, what did I do wrong? So I got called out. I went to the Sergeant Major's office, and he said, your orders have been cut. You're going to Saigon, Indochina. And I said, like an idiot, I said, where is Saigon, Indochina? And he looked at me and he said, what the hell difference does it make? Did I ask you to walk? I said, no, sir. So I didn't say any more, but I went to Saigon, Indochina, because they wanted some combat Marines there to help stabilize the embassy, guard the embassy there, because they felt these Chinese were going to come down, and the Viet Cong were coming down into Saigon, and they were. So I went there, and I was there for 4 months, and we guarded the American legation there for that 4 months. And it wasn't, there were a lot of Viet Cong that would come into the city. As I said, they would take the French Foreign Legion was what was in Saigon at the time. And they would come in and they'd take one of the soldiers, they'd get one of those soldiers isolated, and they'd cut his head off, take his head out to the jungle. So they'd find his body the next morning, he'd bleed out there on the street. They'd find his body the next morning, they have no idea who he was. So what they'd have to do is muster all the troops, and muster all the troops, find out who's missing. Then they'd know, oh, yep, this guy's the one missing. What a great psychological weapon those Viet Cong had on the Foreign Legion, But I met the French general, the guy that ran all of this and all of Saigon. This tough guy, but a neat guy, and he was good to, I don't know why he liked us, but he did. And he was really good to us. He would have us go to this fancy country club they had in Saigon, and oh man, we lived like kings. So we would go there, and he said to me one day, Johnson, we're leaving. Oh God, I said, don't tell me that. He said, yeah, we're leaving. He said, but I'm going to tell you, no offense to your country, but I know what's going to happen. We're going to leave, and your country's going to come in here and show the French how it's really done. I said, well, you may be right, but I hope I'm out of here by then. He said, if you can, you ought to be. I said, yeah, you're right. So they left. And boy, I tried to get out. I finally did manage to get us out of there. Because you know what? There were 18 Marines. The highest rank was sergeant. We were all buck sergeants. 18 of us. So who's in charge? Well, nobody's in charge. We didn't need anybody in charge. But they said, Johnson, you handle the bucks, you run the house, and you run all this. So, because we had servants. We had 8 servants. We lived in a great big 2-story French colonial house. And there were only 6 or 8 of us that lived there. And it's nice. And we had these 8 servants, so we lived high on the hog. They would not allow us to ride in secret. They wouldn't allow us to wear Marine Corps uniforms. You wear civilian clothes. Well, they knew we were military. We all had the same suits, for God's sake. So they knew we were military. So I said to those guys, I don't know how about you, but I've had enough of this crap. I'm going to wear my uniform. Just khakis, And we always carried a .45. And so we put on our khakis, and they said, you can't ride in a Ciclo. You have to ride, we'll give you a car and a chauffeur, which they did. Well, it was really nice. And so we had a car and a chauffeur, but what we had him do, we had to have him sit for 15 minutes outside the house to make sure that they didn't have something wired up to blow that car up, see? And after 15 minutes, we knew that it only took 8 minutes to get to the embassy. So twice that long, we knew we were safe. So that's what we do every day. We'd make it to the embassy, and we'd stand guard up there. At nights, we would go up on the top of the roof. We'd turn the lights out. We'd go out on the roof, and we'd watch the firefights between the Viet Cong and the French Foreign Legion in the jungle across the Saigon River. We stand there and watch that every night. Well, it wasn't much to do, So that's what we'd do. But I stayed here for 4 months. Saigon was a beautiful city. Beautiful. And we did a lot of messing around down there. And, I bought a few odds and ends to take home with me. Not much. Bought my fiance a set of diamond earrings. And they cost me, if you can believe, good stones. They cost me $60 total. I got back here, there was a jewelry store, Argenzio Brothers downtown. Old man Argenzio, I took those into him to see if they were any good. I had them set. You know, you have to draw your own settings. Nothing's ready-made. Nothing, not even the clothes. You pick out the material, they measure you, they make the clothes. So I took him to our Argenzio, and he said, those are European mine cuts. I said, yeah, so? He said, you can't buy these anywhere anymore. You can't buy them in the United States ever. But he said, where'd you get them? I got them in Saigon. He said, you don't know how lucky you are. I said, are they worth anything? Oh, he said, I believe they are. I said, well, good. Since I got them, I didn't know anything. I had a guy pick the stones out for me that was with us. He'd worked in jewelry before, so he knew something about them. And they just bring out a whole pile of diamonds, big pile, handful, set them down, and then you pick them out, and he weighed them, and he looks at them. That's how he picked them out. So anyway, I got them home, gave them to my wife, and she didn't have pierced ears. Subsequently, she got them, but gave them to her. When I got home, and I was gone almost a year to the day. I got home the end of August, pretty close to the end of August, and no, 1st of August, a little after the 1st of August. And then we got married a month later, the 9th of September. Then I went to school, went back to school, went to work. I got home on a Wednesday, went to work on Monday morning. That's how it is.
I think we want to get into just very briefly here is you come back from the Korean War.
Yeah.
And what was the reception?
Well, wasn't anything. I came back, as I said, I came back on a Wednesday, went down to the, I went down the next day to the station and said, could I have my job back? And the boss said, sure. When do you want to start? I said, how about Monday? He says, great. He said, I'll see you Monday morning. So I left, went home, and I was trying to get a car out. It was on blocks and all that, and see my darling fiancée. And I went back down on Monday and went to work, and it was interesting. I ran into some of the guys. I worked for O'Mara Motor Company in those days. I used to deliver parts and ship parts. They were one of the largest parts distributors in a 5-state area. So I did a lot of that. And I'd go out down there, and they'd say, some of those guys say to me, hey, Johnson, where the hell you been? I haven't seen you in a long time. How you doing? I said, I'm fine. He said, well, where you been? Oh, I said, I've been around, took a couple of trips. Oh, I see. That was it. That was it. And nobody cared about the Korean War. I knew that. Hey, you know what? We knew what we did. We didn't have to prove to anybody what we did. And I thought, hey, that's it. They called the Forgotten War. Well, people were sick of it. It was right after World War II. And it was it was sort of bunched in there between that and Vietnam. Oh, in Vietnam, in all honesty, Vietnam cried so much when they got home that they got heard. And the press heard them. And they got all that press. We just did our job. I never thought anything of it. It was my job to do what I did. So I did it. That's it. So I went back and took up my life again. The Chosin was an incredible fight. The Commandant of the Marine Corps said to me once, I was at a 50th anniversary or something, the Commandant was there and he said, I'm sure I'll be in trouble for this. But he said, there are 3 battles that truly distinguish the Marine Corps. And he said, one was Belleau Woods in France in World War I, which held off all the Germans. The second was Iwo Jima in World War II. And he said, and the third was a Chosin Reservoir. And he said, I'm sure I'm going to catch hell from a lot of people for that, but he said, I know. He said, I am a student of history. And he said, I actually believe it's true. And he said, I have had access to footage and and battle reports and stuff. So he said, I believe I'm right. Whatever. But he said that he thinks that will keep the Marine Corps going. Everybody's wanted to get rid of the Marine Corps. This has been going on for years. Oh yeah, Harry Truman didn't like the Marine Corps at all. Oh no, he wanted to get rid of it too. And he was happy to let the Marine Corps do the amphibious landings, But they wanted to get rid of the Marine Corps. They've been trying to do that. World War II, right after World War II, they tried to close off the Marine Corps too. But so far they haven't made it.
They aren't going to make it.
Well, you never know. You just never know what they'll do. Unfortunately, right now, in the Congress of the United States, there are very few people who even have any military training whatsoever. So you never know what's going to happen. There are very few guys around that were there are only 12,500 that were up there, And of that number, only 25 are still alive. 2,500 are still alive. And out of that, 274 made it to this reunion. And, there were 500 counting the women, but 274 men made it. And they don't know what they'll have on the next one. Because, we're all getting older than dirt, And for years, I never heard or knew anything. It took 40 years before I ever heard anything from my own people on my own battery. And I got a phone call from my executive officer. And we had our first reunion out by Camp Lejeune. And from then on, we started meeting every other year. But, nobody knew, nobody cared, That's just the way it was.
You go to the reunions. Is that kind of therapeutic?
Well, it's fun, I go, these guys are all, this one guy, and I don't even know him. And he's in the North Texas chapter. I ran into him one morning, he said, hey, Johnson. He said, you don't know me. He said, I was in headquarters in the 11th Marines. I said, yeah. He said, remember when you guys got ambushed on the road there, going into Hagaroo? I said, yeah, I remember it. He said, hell, I was back there about a quarter of a mile behind you. He said, right on the same road. And he said, I watched those guys come after you. He said, Jesus, I mean, a lot of them. Yeah. There's a lot of them. He said, by God, he said, you remember that McReynolds? I said, yeah. I said, that dipstick put me out there on the point? And he's laughing. We had a good time. We were laughing, and having a hell of a time. He said, but you made it. I said, yeah. I said, just like you made it. He said, we all made it.
With everything that you went through, all the friends you lost, and all the terrible experiences you had, what happened to that in your mind? Was that with you all this time?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff I've forgotten, and I'm just as glad I did. But there's stuff I never forget. I never forget. I think about it. Sometimes I don't dream as much as I used to, but I dream about it. Sometimes I'll just be sitting on the patio and I'll think about it, but it doesn't make any difference. I just keep it quiet, The only one who really pays the price is my wife and my family, I think. Because I was awfully hard on my kids. Too hard, I think. Way too hard. I wanted them, I was hard on them because I wanted them to grow up, and I wanted them to be productive, and I wanted them to be able to do a day and a half's work for a day's pay, and they'd always have a job. And I wanted them to learn how to work. I made them learn how to work. And I guess I was way too hard, They're all successful, not because of me, I think in spite of me. I have a son who has his doctorate and was a professor at the University of California at Davis, and a biologist, and a highly thought of biologist in California. So he's done wonderfully well. And I have a son who was a pastor in the Presbyterian Church for several years, and now has his own business, and he does counseling, Christian counseling, I think. And I have a daughter who is bright as hell. She is a what do you call it? She's human resources, and she's really, now she's out of a job, but she's really, really good and has done extremely well. And so the kids have all done well, as I say, in spite of me, I think. But I have PTSD or whatever that crap is the VA says I have, but I never went to counseling or any of that stuff out there. This guy says to me, well, you probably handle this all right. I said, yeah, I can handle it all right. Just leave me, let me be. So I got, I think they said I had 30% PTSD and all that crap. And I have frostbite in both legs, and I have neuropathy in both legs. And in fact, the neuropathy is getting worse, I guess. But you know what? We're all gonna die of something. One of these days that'll happen. But I've had a good life, and I've lived 60 years longer than I should have. And it's the truth, I have. And I've had a wonderful wife, and gosh, a guy can't ask for more than that. You go to one of those reunions of the chosen few. It looks like the walking wounded, Hell, they're on carts, and they're on, what do you call them? They're walking around, walkers and canes, and Jesus, they're a mess, But by God, they're tough. And they've survived this long, they're tough. And I tell you, they had a thing for the wives. My wife said it was sad. She said that they were telling these women that these guys, they're hard, we have short fuses, most of us, and, I try to control the hell out of it if I can, but we have a short fuse. Your wife takes the brunt of all that crap. And they told the women, you know what, I'm sure a lot of them have mellowed, and these women were saying yes, and this gal was talking to them, and she was a doctor, I think, and she said, but I'm going to tell you something. The older they get, the more that PTSD is going to come back on them. He said that's just the way it is. We've done studies to find it out. Oh God, I said, I hope not. I said, Joan, I don't want that to be. I'm going to be careful. Yeah, she helps me. Oh, she'll say to me, hey, cool it. And I do. I do get teed off at people occasionally, but I try to cool it. It's because I'm old.
Do you get to meet any of the current Marines, anybody that's serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, and are they aware of what you guys did at the Chosin Reservoir?
I don't know. They say they have to learn about the Chosin in boot camp. I don't know whether they do or not. I don't know what the hell they teach them, but I guess they do. But yes, I have. I've been out to Camp Pendleton. I don't do it anymore. I did. Went out there 4 or 5 years, and I'd meet these guys. Oh, and they were great. They were really good to us. But yeah, I met those guys, and I talked to them. They were good to us, really good to us. And I would talk to them, and I'd ask them about how it was in Iraq. What'd you guys do in Iraq? The hardest thing in the world is going through a city and going into houses and buildings. They're waiting for you. You open that door and hell, they got you, And I said to him, what do you guys do? He said, well, we send 5 guys in, only 5. And we figure that one of the 5 won't make it out. I said, that's not too damn good odds, fellas. Why? Well, they only, He said, because you know what they do? They put women and children in the room. And then he said, they stay behind the door, and he said, they roll a grenade out at you. They don't care if they kill the women and children. People don't realize, I think, that only in America do we have a real, whole life, and I don't know what I'm trying to say, that we hold it in more esteem. The rest of the world, life's cheap. I mean, they kill people, they don't care. But South Korea, I went to South Korea. Do you know I've been selected but I'm not going to go, I guess. I've been selected by that Greatest Generation Foundation to go back to Korea this next month on a revisit program. 5 of us, 5 guys to go. But it's going to come at a time when, I think when my wife and I are going to take a trip. We're going to go to Budapest, and then we're going to float down 3 rivers and end up in Amsterdam. And I'm going to do that with my wife. You know, I've been to Korea once. I didn't lose anything over there I want to go get, you know. So I'm going to be with my wife instead. But it would have been a nice thing to go back. But that's life. Can't do everything. So that's it. That's enough, I think.